Guys, today we are going to reach the chapter 18, the last chapter of the concise laws of human nature. The law of death denial. Most of us spend our lives avoiding the thought of death. Instead, the inevitability of death should be continually on our minds. Understanding the shortness of life fills us with a sense of purpose and urgency to realize our goals. Training ourselves to confront and accept this reality makes it easier to manage the inevitable setbacks, separations, and crises in life. It gives us a sense of proportion of what really matters in this brief existence of ours. Most people continually look for ways to separate themselves from others and feel superior. Instead, we must see the mortality in everyone, how it equalizes and connects as well as all. By becoming deeply aware of our mortality, we intensify our experience of every aspect of life. When I look back at the past and think of all the time I squandered in error and idleness, lacking the knowledge needed to live, when I think of how often I sinned against my heart and my soul, then my heart bleeds. Life is a gift. Life is happiness. Enemy, every minute could have been an eternity of happiness if youth only knew. Now my life will change. Now I will be reborn. Dear brother, I swear that I shall not lose hope. I will keep my soul pure and my heart open. I will be reborn for the better. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Keys to Human Nature. For us humans, death is a source not only of fear but also of awkwardness. We are the only animal truly conscious of our impending mortality. In general, we owe our power as a species to our ability to think and reflect. But in this particular case, our thinking brings us nothing but misery. All we can see is the physical pain involved in dying, the separation from loved ones, and the uncertainty as to when such a moment might arrive. We do what we can to avoid that thought, to distract ourselves from the reality, but the awareness of death lies in the back of our minds and can never be completely shaken. We become aware of our mortality quite early on in childhood, and this filled us with an anxiety that we cannot remember, but that was very real and visceral. Such anxiety cannot be wished away or denied. It sits in us. It sits in us as adults in a powerful latent form. When we choose to repress the thought of death, our anxiety is only made stronger by our not confronting the source of it. The slightest incident of uncertainty about the future will tend to stir up this anxiety and even make it chronic. To fight this, we will tend narrow down the scope of our thoughts and activities if we don't leave our comfort zones in what we think and do. When we make a life rather predictable and feel less vulnerable to anxiety, certain addictions to foods or stimulants or forms of entertainment will have a similar dulling effect. If we take this far enough, we become increasingly self absorbed and less dependent on people who often have dulling effect. If we take this far enough, we become increasingly self absorbed and less dependent on people who often stir up our anxieties with their unpredictable behavior. We can describe the contrast between life and death in the following manner: death is absolute stillness, without movement or change except a decay. In that, we are separated from others and completely alone. Life, on the other hand, is movement, connection to other living things, and diversity of life forms. By denying and um, repressing the thought of death, we feed our anxieties and become more death-like. From whether it's separated from other people, our thinking habitual and repetitive with little overall movement and change. On the other hand, the familiarity and closeness with death, the ability to confront the thought of it as has the paradoxical effect of making us feel more alive. By connecting to the reality of death, we can connect more profoundly to the reality of fullness of life. By separating death from life and repressing our awareness of it, we do the opposite. We what we require in modern world is a way to create for ourselves the positive paradoxical effect. The following is an attempt to help accomplish this by forging a practical philosophy for transforming the conscious of our mortality into something productive and life change enhancing. A philosophy of life through death. The philosophy we are adopting depends on our ability to go in the opposite direction we normally feel toward death, to look at it more closely and deeply. The following are 5 key strategies with appropriate exercises. To help us achieve this, it is best to pull all 5 into practices so that this philosophy can seep into our daily consciousness and alter our experiences from within. Make the awareness visceral. Normally, we go through life in a very distracted, dreamlike state, with our gaze turned inward. Much of our mental anxiety revolves around fantasies and resentments that are completely internal and have little relationship to the reality. Agreed. The proximity of death suddenly snaps us to attention as our whole body responds to the threat. We feel the rush of adrenaline, the blood pumping extra hard to the brain and through the nervous system. This focuses the mind to a much higher level, and we notice new details, see people's faces in a new light, and the sense the impermanence in everything around us, deepening our emotional responses. This effect can linger for years, even decades. We cannot reproduce that experience without risking our lives, but we can gain some of the effect through smaller closes. We must begin by meditating on our death and seeking to convert it into something more real and physical. We can often sense that physicality in those moments before we fall asleep. For a few seconds, we feel ourselves passing from one form of consciousness to another, and that sleep has a death like sensation. Hmm. There's nothing to be afraid of in this. In fact, in moving in this direction, we make major advancements in diminishing our chronic anxiety. We can use our imagination in this as well. By envisioning the day our death arrives, where we might be, how it might come, we can also try to look at the world as if we were seeing things for the last time. Agree. The people around us, the everyday sights and sounds, the hum of the traffic, the sound of the birds, the view outside our window. We must not be afraid of the pangs of sadness that ensue from this perception. The tightness of our emotions, usually so wound up around our own needs and concerns. Sorry. The tightness of our emotions, usually so wound up around our own needs and concerns, is now opening up to the world and to the mm, poignancy of life itself, and we should welcome this. Awaken to the shortness of life. When we unconsciously disconnect ourselves from the awareness of death, we forge a particular relationship to time, one that is rather loose and distant. We come to imagine that we always have more time than is the reality. Okay. Then, if a deadline is forced upon us on a particular project, that dream like relationship to time is shattered. Sorry. Then, if a deadline is forced upon us on a particular project, the dream like a relationship to time is shattered. And for some mysterious reasons, we find the focus to get done in days what would have taken weeks or months. The change imposed upon us by the deadline has a physical component. Our adrenaline is pumping, filling us with energy and concentrating the mind, making it more creative. We must think of our mortality as a kind of continual deadline, giving a similar effect as described above to all our actions in life. We must stop fooling ourselves. We could die tomorrow, and even if we live for another 8 years, it is but a drop in the ocean of the vastness of time, and it passes always more quickly than we imagine. Let the awareness of the shortness of life clarify our daily actions. We have goals to reach, projects to get done, relationships to improve. This could be our last such project, our last battle on earth, given the uncertainties of life, and we must commit completely to what we do. See the mortality in everyone. In 1665, a terrible plague roared through London, killing close to 100,000 inhabitants. The writer Daniel Defoe was only 5 years old at the time, but he witnessed the plague firsthand, and it left a lasting impression on him. Some 60 years later, he decided to recreate the events in London that year through the eyes of an older narrator using his own memories. Much research and the journal of his uncle creating a book, a journal of the plague year. As the plague raged, the narrator of the book notices a peculiar phenomenon. People tend to feel much greater levels of empathy toward their fellow Londoners. The normal differences between them, particularly over religious issues, vanish. With the plague, no one is spared, no matter their wealth or station in life. Feeling personally vulnerable and seeing the vulnerability of everyone else, people's normal sense of difference and privilege is melted away, and an uncommon generalized empathy emerges. With our philosophy, we want to manufacture the cleaning effect that the plague has on our tribal tendencies and usual self absorption. We want to begin this on a smaller scale by looking first at those around us in our home and our workplace, the seeing im- and seeing and imagining their deaths and noting how this can suddenly alter our perception of them. We want to see that uniqueness of the other person in the present, bringing out those qualities we have taken for granted. We want to experience their vulnerability to pain and death, not just our own. We can take this meditation further. Let us look at the pedestrians in any busy city and realize that in 90 years it is likely that none of them will be alive, including us. The more we can create this physical connection to people through our common mortality, the better we are able to handle human nature in all its varieties with tolerance and grace. Embrace all pain and diversity. There is much in life we cannot control, with death as the ultimate example of this. We will experience illness and physical pain. We will go through separation with people. We will face failures from our own mistakes and the nasty malevolence of our fellow humans. And our task is to accept these moments and even embrace them, not for the pain but for the opportunities to learn and strengthen ourselves. In doing so, we affirm life itself, accepting all of its possibilities, and at the core of this, our complete acceptance of death. We put this into practice by continually seeing events as fateful. Everything happens for a reason, and it is up to us to glean the lesson. This love of fate has the power to alter everything we experience and lighten the burdens we carry. Why complain over this or that, when in fact we see much events as occurring for a reason and ultimately enlightening us? Why feel envy for what others have when we possess something far greater, the ultimate approach to the harsh realities of life? Open the mind to the sublime. Think of death as a kind of threshold we all must cross. As such, it represents the ultimate mystery. We cannot possibly find the words or concept to express what it is. We confront something that is truly unknowable. No amount of science or technology or expertise can solve this riddle or verbalize it. We humans can fool ourselves that we know just about everything, but at this threshold we are finally left dumb and groping. This confrontation with something we cannot know or verbalize, this is that is what we shall call the sublime, whose Latin root means up to the threshold. The sublime is anything that exceeds our capacity for words or concepts by being too large, too vast, too dark and mysterious. The sublime is anything that exceeds our capacity for words or concepts by being too large, too vast, too dark, and mysterious. And when we face such things, we feel a touch of fear, but also awe and wonder. We are reminded of our smallness, of what is much vaster and more powerful than our puny will. Feeling the sublime is the perfect antidote to our complacency and to the petty concerns of daily life that can consume us and leave us feeling rather empty. Feeling the sublime is the perfect antidote to our complacency, complacency and to the petty concerns of daily life that can consume us and leave us feeling rather empty. The model for feeling the sublime comes in our meditation on mortality, but we can train our minds to experience it through other thoughts and actions. Or, for instance, when we look up at the night sky, we can let our minds try to fathom the infinity of space and the overwhelming smallness of our planet, lost in all the darkness. We can experience the sublime by contemplating other forms of life. We have our own belief about what is real based on our nervousness and perceptual systems, but the reality of bats, which perceive through echolocation, is of a different order. The sense things beyond our perceptual system. What are the other elements we cannot perceive? The other realities invisible to us. What are the other elements we cannot perceive? The other realities invisible to us. We can also expose ourselves to places on the planet where all our normal compass points are scrambled, a vastly different culture, or certain landscapes where the human element seems particularly puny, such as the open sea, a vast expanse of snow, a particularly enormous mountain, physically confronted with what dwarfs you, what dwarfs us, physically confronted with what dwarfs us, we are forced to reverse our normal perception in which we are the center and measure of everything. In the face of the sublime, we feel a shiver, or shiver, a foretaste of death itself, something too large for our minds to encompass, and for a moment it shakes us out of our smugness and releases us from death-like grip of habit and banality. In the end, think of this philosophy in the following terms. Since the beginning of human consciousness, our awareness of death has terrified us. This terror has shaped our beliefs, our religions, our institutions, and so much of our behavior in ways we cannot see or understand. We humans have become the slaves to our fears and our evasions. When we turn this around, becoming more aware of our mortality, we experience a taste of true freedom. We no longer feel the need to to what we think and do in order to make life predictable. We no longer feel the need to restrict what we think and do in order to make life predictable. We can be more daring without feeling afraid of the consequences. We can cut loose from all the illusions and addictions that we employ to numb our anxiety. We can commit fully to our work, to our relationships, to all our actions. And once we experience some of this freedom, we will want to explore further and expand our responsibilities as far as time will allow us. We will want to explore further and expand our possibilities as far as time will allow us. We can commit fully to our work, to our relationships, to all our actions. And once we experience some of this freedom, we will want to explore further and expand our possibilities as far as time will allow us. Let us rid death of its strangeness, come to know it, get used to it. Let us have nothing on our minds as often as death. At every moment, let us picture it in our imagination in all its aspects. It is uncertain where death awaits us. Let us await it everywhere. Premeditation of death is premeditation of freedom. He who has learned know how he who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. Knowing how to die frees us from all subjection and constraint. Michael de Montaigne. I love this part. Premeditation of death is premeditation of freedom. He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. Knowing how to die frees us from all subjection and constraint. Michelle de Montaigne. So basically, what she's trying to say is, when you wake up in the day, be grateful because you have waked up in the morning, and ask yourself one question: if today is the last day of myself in this earth, in this family, then what is the most important thing I would do? Or if this is my last day, then imagine yourself like, if this is my last day, and then where I want to die. Do I want to die in a where I have born, like in a poor situation with no money and leave my family to suffer, or I want to die in a place where I have achieved everything, my goals, money, a good family, relationships, and a good empire I have built. Now I can die peacefully and my family can continue the lead. Where you want to die? That's all. That's how we can use that as a motivation, as a fuel to live a purposeful life. Okay guys, I think that's enough for today. And yeah, I have read completely of this book. In next read, I'm going to read in next video I'm going to read a book called this one, Elon Musk. Wait this book. This book. Okay, I'm going to read this book, and we will see you in the next video. Till then, take care and bye bye.